All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Oh, thanks. I'm humbled and, might I say, overwhelmed. Please, folks, please remain standing if you would. Yes, please. Yes, thank you. It is our Tuesday show, and let me just say that today we are worthy of your recorded adulation because we have 2 Pulitzer Prize winners today.
What?
Yes, I know. David Cay Johnston, who regularly makes appearances here on Tuesdays, he will be here. But he will be joined by the author of a new book that I love, Illiberal America, it's called. And it is the great historian, professor, and author, Steven Hahn. Yeah, Steven Hahn will be here. He's a PhD from Yale, teaches at NYU. He's got this best-selling book, and if you think you knew America before, you'll really know America after the conversation with Steven Hahn. Again, it's called Illiberal America, the book, and it talks a lot about how we think we've taken 2 steps forward, but sometimes we've taken 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And many of us, I think, are aware of sort of the broad strokes of what Hahn talks about in his book. The fact that there are aspects of America that seem so ingrained in the texture. They go underground for a while, but then they come back and surge in generally relation to a reaction to what's going on or had been going on for the prior decade or moments in American history. You can talk about Jim Crow laws. You can talk about the election of Barack Obama. You can talk about the reaction to the election of Barack Obama. There's a lot in the world of the evolution of this nation that reflects a kind of pendulum swing. And Hahn argues in his book that this illiberalism, the exclusionary aspect of so much that has been America and continues to rumble through America, that is part of the DNA of this country. And the conversation will put some specifics on it. I think you'll really like it. The book is excellent, and we'll get into that a little bit later this hour. And of course, the brilliant David Cay Johnston, and we'll speak to David in the second hour. We will talk about Tehran. We'll talk about Israel. We'll talk about this moment in time, Trump having left the G7 early to get back to Washington. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I never know whether when he says I'm leaving early because I've got to get back for conversations around what's happening internationally, if that's something he really is doing or that he's going to play golf. I mean, he told the West Point, didn't he speak at West Point, Kim? He told the West Point graduates that he had to leave because he had to deal with a situation in China and a negotiation going on, and then he went to go play golf. So in this case, I think he did want to get out of the G7. I'm sure he, again, is probably bored by it, not enough talk about him or whatever. But what I also would say is it is true that this moment in time is insanely important. And so to that degree, I think we can have a conversation around what's happening in Tehran, in Iran, with Israel, and include Trump or exclude Trump. It doesn't matter. The significance of the moment is there either way. So welcome to Kim, who has
Kim, how are you?
Always stalwartly watched world events and will continue to through the show. She's our news person, came with us from KGO. KGO is the radio show that birthed this show. And KGO Radio was in San Francisco. It's gone away. The entire station folded. We were doing fine, but the corporate overlords essentially penciled out the fact that they could make more money just by deleting the station and turning it to a sports gambling station, which is what they did initially. And then they flipped it back to simulcast a right-wing station that was already on the air in San Francisco. So that's really our origin story. But Kim is here, and she keeps us all honest. She watches the chat. She, of course, covers news events of all sorts.
Kim, how are you?
She also has 2 extraordinary children. I don't have any kids, so in a way, I feel like I'm father to this show. Yeah, that's right. I feel like I'm the delinquent parent that watches this show. Kim is far more vigilant. Chaplain Fred with a $5 super chat to get us going. Hi, Mark and Kim. Maybe Trump was told to go hide in the bunker. Hey, could be. Could be. Tony is here as well.
Thanks, Tony.
And Wes Theory with a $5 super sticker. We shout out people who hit us with super stickers and super chats, as you might, because we are we're crowdfunded. It's kind of an NPR PBS model. We do the show for free. It's broadcast on YouTube and across Spotify and Apple Podcasts and across Google Podcasts. Most podcast platforms carry our show, iHeartRadio. And so you can find our show as an audio podcast in all those different places. But the show is live on this platform only, YouTube. And so the way that you support us on YouTube in the moment is super chats and super stickers. But the backbone of our show and the way we're supported, of course, is Patreon and PayPal. Did you see that Trump said he doesn't care what Gabbard said about the intelligence of Iran not being close to having a bomb, that he didn't care what she said, and that he knew better? I didn't see that. Yeah. If I'm Gabbard, I'm resigning. Well, these people have no bottom. You understand that? They have there's no depth to which they won't stoop to supplicate themselves to Donald Trump. It's an extraordinary thing. There is no humiliation in this group. They look at Marco Rubio, look at Pete Hegseth, look at these people who just feel lucky to be able to have access to taxpayer-funded lifestyles, to the power, the tremendous power that comes with being Tulsi Gabbard, control over the intelligence community. Think about Hegseth, a guy who is a weekend host on Fox News Channel. I mean, he's waiting to somehow mainstream and become the host on the weekday show of Fox News Channel, Fox and Friends. He's simply got that job as Pentagon secretary as a result of his constant and unwavering support of Trump on television. That was it. He should be a publicist somewhere, is what he should be. He's a talking head, and he's running the Department of Defense. So when you look at that, you realize, there is no task too humiliating. There is no comment too cutting for these guys to stomach it. They're just so lucky, they feel, to be in the game. And they should feel lucky to be in the game. But we should be concerned, especially at this moment. So when Donald Trump says, I'm going back to meet with my cabinet on a situation that is so inflammatory, that's so incendiary, that's so fragile, Iran and Israel and a wider Middle East conflict, he's going back to meet with these people that you talk about. Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio. I mean, these are incompetents. Those are the people who are advising this president on this situation.
Didn't he say that when he was president, we would have no wars?
In less than 24 hours. Now his thing is, if I'd been president, this wouldn't have happened if I'd been president instead of Biden.
I thought he was going to fix it with a phone call. And under Trump, he's the peace president. We're going to have no conflict. Everything's good. We're all good.
So he left the G7 early. And let me just tell people what else is in hour two, because in addition to David Cay Johnston, I want to get into this conversation with it's kind of a palate cleanser to a lot of this. with a Hollywood Reporter investigative journalist who is an award-winning journalist, twice given the highest award for investigative journalism, works for the Hollywood Reporter. He's just done a novel, but we will talk about his novel, and we'll also talk about some real-life situations and cases and the world of investigative reporting and the world of Hollywood. That's kind of toward the end of the show, so I just want to give you a sense of that as well. Hey, smash the like button if you would be so
with
kind.
Your iron rod.
It costs you nothing, and it helps us in the algorithm, and the algorithm likes to see shows liked then served to other people. This is my big breakthrough that I've discovered.
Smash it with your iron rod.
If you like the show and we reach a certain threshold, we'll show up in other feeds that otherwise don't even know that we're here. So that's kind of how this works. The last thing I'll say, and then I will get to, I've got Hegseth on Fox News Channel, even as Trump is winging his way home. Hegseth's got time to, for his close-up on Fox News Channel. I also have Donald Trump on Air Force One. Got a lot of stuff for you. But I did want to mention, I'll mention firstly that I will have This is delicious coffee from Coachella Valley Coffee. Check them out, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. If ever there was a day that we needed coffee on this show, it's today. Because we were up all night in my house. We are very worried about what's going on in the Middle East. Courtney is really agitated about it. And I'm quite agitated about it. I'd say she's on 10 and I'm on 7 right now. But the reality is that we needed a little kick this morning. And so we've got it with CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. So CoachellaValleyCoffee.com is where you go to get curated coffee. That is to say, curated for your taste. Their tasting notes with all the different beans, all organic from women-owned farms. Check them out, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It is literally the best coffee I've ever tasted. I think you'll love it. We get nothing but great reports from everybody who jumps in and gives it a try. They're also just great people. And I like to support great people and great organizations, and they are both. But do get our discount code when you check out. 10% off if you use Mark T at checkout. 10% off. And you know what? You can share that discount code. Share that discount code if you want. But in any case, enjoy CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Enjoy the tea. Enjoy the spices. Enjoy it all. If you're
The Mark Thompson Show.
If you're wondering about our meetup, I'll give you details on that bottom of the hour. It is coming up, June swoon. Vilma says, Mark and Kim, Trump family has a great deal for you. Trump is starting a family mobile phone company that may have some great offers for you. Not. Yeah, we talked about it yesterday. It's the 4547, right? Isn't that what?
The Trump mobile, yeah.
They give you the phone for $500.
Yeah.
And then the monthly is 4547, I think.
4745.
Oh, 4745. Okay.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, I only have one thing to say, Vilma. I wasn't going to mention this now, but I'll mention it because, we read your comments and respond to them. The phone to which you referred and that we spoke about yesterday, where will it be made? China. You're damn straight.
No, it's supposed to be made in America.
Supposed to be, but when reality kicks in.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh.
The phone will. It's possible, and this is probably the best we'll do with regard to the phone. It's possible that it will be constructed in this country, but all of the component parts will come from China.
That's cheating. Yeah.
So the idea that you somehow,
made
embargo
in America
everything from China, it's sort of it's kind of bogus. So but thanks for the super chat. Appreciate that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
And I look forward to getting a text from you from your new Trump phone. Donald Trump leaving the G7 early, returning to Washington. And he, at the same time, made the announcement that the people in Tehran should evacuate immediately. I mean, that's a chilling announcement from a U.S. president. It echoed, of course, the announcement from the Israelis. The Israeli Defense Forces did target military infrastructure, supposedly, but they're also hitting, collateral targets. And so Donald Trump leaving the G7 early, the idea somehow that there is a quick ramping up of military confrontation in the Middle East, these are things of great, great concern. Iran is not Iraq, as you know. If you get into a thing with Iran, it's going to be a much, much tougher situation than Iraq. And Iraq was no party.
Mm-mm.
So where was the Secretary of Defense during all of this? On Fox News Channel, of course. Here is Pete Hegseth speaking to Jesse Waters last night as all of this was going on.
Defend federal agents who are under attack, yet he gets mischaracterized. So it's all a lie. It's all a misrepresentation. President Trump loves all Americans, wants American citizens to be kept safe, wants to defend our border, all the things they mischaracterize. Of course, the parade's another one of them. We know, we get to watch President Trump every day. We know where his core is. We know that he loves the American people, wants a parade to celebrate our army, and the rest of them can just be haters. That's all they are.
So you're going to be in the Situation Room pretty soon with the president. Is he still aiming for a nuclear deal with the Iranians?
Of course. The president's, as he said today, his position has not changed. What you're watching in real time is peace through strength and America first. Our job is to be strong. We are postured defensively in the region to be strong in pursuit of a peace deal. And we certainly hope that's what happens here. And America first means we're going to defend American personnel and American interests. So when you see jets and you see air defense assets and counter UAS assets, that's because my job as the Secretary of Defense is to ensure that our people are safe and that we're strong so that we can set the conditions for a deal. And President Trump's made it clear it's on the table. The question is whether Iran will take it.
All right. So
okay, I just want to share a little bit. First of all, I think it's more than a little bit effed up that the Secretary of Defense has time to go on Fox News Channel as the President of the United States has left the G7 early to get back to Washington for a cabinet meeting. I guess the cabinet meeting didn't start until later that night or whatever. It just seemed, these are people who are always anxious to get on television and promulgate what they do about Trump and about America first. They want to get that propaganda out all the time. And maybe that is a priority to this administration. They're really about the theater, about the announcement, about the propaganda, get it out there. So maybe that's exactly what the idea was. And that Trump was very much behind the idea that Hegseth should go on Fox News Channel, make the point, that we're still trying to make a nuclear disarmament deal with Tehran. All right. Anyway, I thought it was odd.
Did you see that over the way that Trump is handling this so far, his supporters are coming out against him? I was reading something about on the Joe Rogan show, they called for his impeachment. And then Tucker Carlson, a longtime Trump supporter, was talking about how he's disappointed with the way the president is handling the Iran situation, to the point where Trump got snippy about it and said on camera that let Carlson go find a TV network if he has something to say.
I mean, it's with Trump.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of things can be true. First of all, from a personality standpoint, you're only as good as your last comment or your last thing that you've done for me, Donald Trump. So he turns like a rabid animal, But the other thing is that it is true. And you kind of were hinting at this at the beginning of the show, Kim, when you said, I thought he said he was going to end all the wars in the first 24 hours or whatever, that the fraud of his pronouncements and of his declarations and of his profile as anti-war, it's being exposed as a fraud now. I mean, think about those things that he has most emphasized. He just had a huge 45 to 100 million, depending on how you do the numbers, 45 to 100 million dollar parade. It was a military parade in Washington. And you can say it was a celebration of the Army's anniversary. I get it. Okay. But what I'm saying is that was an odd emphasis that Trump wanted. He likes the military flex. He likes to talk tough. So then he, as you know, in the early days of his administration, which were not that long ago, he started talking about invading Mexico, invading Canada. This is your peace candidate? I mean, it seems as though he beats the war drum all the time. It's the easiest way to display the macho that I think is a part of the masculine profile of this administration. So we get to this place where a lot of his followers are going, dude, you're supposed to be the peace guy. No more wars, no more forever wars. What's going on? Here is Trump aboard Air Force One. Do you have it, Tony? I think he addressed the media on Air Force One as he flew back.
What was the thinking on the call for Tehran to evacuate? Is there a threat, or is
What was the thinking on the call for Iran to evacuate? Is there a threat there, or is what's going on is the question?
That's always possible. A thing like that could happen. I just want people to be safe. Is there any new concern?
I can't hear him well enough. I don't think people can hear him well enough.
That's why I turn on the subtitles, because you can't hear him at all. It's
and so if you're not, if you're just listening and not watching, you probably can't make it. But he's saying, in typical Trump generic talk, he's saying, I just want people to be safe. Of course, that's possible. That there could be a threat to Tehran. The fact that Trump was echoing the Israeli call for full evacuation, that's not nothing. That means he knows something. And clearly the Israelis, this isn't a surgical strike from the standpoint of just disabling a nuclear capacity and capability. This is something more. And this, it would seem, is designed to hobble this regime in Iran. It might lead to a regime change. They keep saying, we, the Israelis, just want the people of Iran who've been dominated by this religious, the religious overlords that have ruled Iran since the Iranian Revolution of, was it 79? We want those people to finally have a say in who runs your country. And so we are hoping that this opportunity, this is essentially a reducto on what the Israelis are saying. And Netanyahu says it almost in these words. We're hoping that the people of Iran rise up and they call for the regime change. So, we'll destabilize, you guys change the regime. But at the base of this was the real threat that Iran was close to nuclear capabilities, and that they would likely farm out a lot of those nuclear capabilities to like the Houthis, to surrogates in the Middle East. We'll talk to more about this with David Cay Johnston in hour 2. But that's a little something of what's happening in that world of the Middle East. I'm getting way behind here, but I wanted to just address that before we got much further. So we continue.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Very excited to have a Pulitzer Prize winner on the show. This is a double Pulitzer moment, isn't it, Kim? We have 2 Pulitzer winners on the show today. I think this is quite exciting.
It's a double Pulitzer kind of day for us.
It's a double Pulitzer day, and I always felt, as you know, frequent visitor to this show, Michael Hiltzik, who is the Pulitzer winner for the LA Times, we went to university together, and I feel that puts me Pulitzer adjacent. And so I just want Steven Hahn to know that, I don't have a Pulitzer, but I feel like I'm in that universe. This guy is amazing, professor of history, professor at NYU, teaching history, got a PhD from Yale, and has written a terrific book called Illiberal America. Put it together for Steven Hahn, everybody. How are you, sir?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me on the show. And I'm glad you're in the Pulitzer universe. I'm sure it should be extended to you too.
There's a Pulitzer deep inside me, Steven.
Well, I think they're having podcasts, including that in Pulitzer Awards. So you're in line.
Well, I'm sure that's true, and if it's true, that will be the degrading of the Pulitzer Prize.
I don't think so.
I was telling everybody before, as we were beginning the show, that you outline in your book so many ways that illiberalism has sort of coexisted with liberalism, and that we may have a sense that the country is evolving toward inclusion and liberalism, which is a step away from the illiberalism and exclusion that you talk about in your book. But the reality is, and I think this is just so beautifully detailed in your book with example after example, the illiberalism, the exclusion and the exclusionary nature of a lot of policy and, frankly, a lot of thinking on the part of the people of America, that's been with us from the very beginning. And it constantly, and maybe even now these days, we see it in a bald-faced way. It constantly is showing itself in America.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. And, I think that's well put. One of the things that has been widely accepted is that what's at the center of American history and American political experience and culture is this idea of a liberal tradition. And therefore, anything that deflects from that is to be considered temporary and a backlash, really rageful and insubstantial. And I, as a historian and someone who has studied the deep past and spent a lot of time studying the history of the American South and African American history, I know that that's really a misconception, and that it's important for us to recognize that our political traditions are multifaceted. It's not just liberalism and illiberalism. In some ways, recognizing liberalism as one of a number of political currents helps us appreciate other political developments in our past in some ways that need to be excavated at this point, and which unfortunately have been erased. But certainly illiberal ideas about inequality, about particularist rights, about marking internal and external enemies, about a desire for cultural and or religious uniformity, about the use of violence as a means of attaining and maintaining power, and the idea of the will of the community as it designates itself over the rule of law. And these ideas have existed in many, many iterations, and it's not simply continuity. But I think we need to recognize that these have always been close to the surface, and they have erupted at numerous points. And it's not, however much people might think, well, if we get rid of so-and-so, we've solved the problem. I think that's, a state of denial.
Well, you point up so beautifully all of these times during our history that this illiberalism exists, and oftentimes in reaction to liberalism. And maybe we should explain, in 30 seconds or less, I use the word exclusion for illiberalism, because you do as well. But and maybe just to get us acquainted with the landscape, you can give us an example of illiberalism and liberalism as they coexist.
Well, that's a very good point. Let's think about the 1830s and Andrew Jackson, Jacksonian democracy. That is generally seen as a period that sees the expansion of voting rights in the United States, which is true. The elimination of property holding requirements for voting and office holding for white people. But at the same time, it is a decade that sees the expulsion, the largest mass expulsion in our history of Native people, of Catholics, of Black people, of abolitionists, of Mormons. And so, in a sense, you have this situation of establishing kind of an illiberal democracy. It's not to deny that there's not democratic features, because this is when Alexis de Tocqueville wrote Democracy in America. You know, he was impressed by this, but he was also worried about what he was seeing.
You know, we grow up in this place, America, and I think we're taught, and it's either implied or explicitly taught, the myth of American exceptionalism. You know, we grow up thinking, well, you know, those were the old days, and we know it was screwed up back then, slavery, etc. But now we've grown up. We realize the sins of the past. Right. What you do is you point out that's sadly kind of baked into what America is.
You know, there is this idea of a kind of redemption story. For a long time, these so-called sins of the past weren't even recognized, that historians and others weren't even writing about or concerned about slavery or racism or what happened to Native people and so on and so forth. When they began to do that, I think there was a sense that history moves forward, and that what we didn't have then, little by little, we have now. And so finally we redeem ourselves. And remember, when Barack Obama was elected, I think for a lot of people, it seemed to mark the fulfillment. You know, people were talking about now we were in a post-racial society for 2 minutes until the Tea Party came along. And so, you know, I really do think that part of the issue is to recognize that history doesn't only move forward. It moves forward and backwards and sideways, and it cross purposes. I don't think it repeats itself, but we have to recognize that we can't assume that making progress at one point will finish will solve all the problems.
Yeah, and even in the case of Barack Obama, I mean, you'll remember it was suggested he's not a citizen. He was born in this country, and there was resistance.
It's a really interesting thing, because those of us who study the Reconstruction period, where former slaveholders in the South recognized that slavery was over, but they were aghast at the idea that their former slaves could actually have the right to vote and hold office. So it was a sense of illegitimacy. And when Barack Obama was running, and then when he was president, the idea of birtherism and so on and so forth, the notion, again, it was kind of excavated once more. Trump obviously made his whole career in politics around this, which is black people oughtn't be in positions of power like that. And some of the illustrations that try to demean Barack Obama were very much like those of the Reconstruction period, in poking fun at African Americans who had attained political office in local as well as state political power.
And you discuss in the book the ways in which the very real notion, exclusionary notion, again, illiberal notion of people who are part of America, they're here, but they're not qualified to really have a seat at the table in any way.
That's right. You know, in a way, we do have this idea, as you pointed out, of American exceptionalism, right? And the American exceptionalism has to do with the expansion of democracy, of political rights, of individualism, and so on and so forth. Now, all nations have their own version of exceptionalism, which is their claim to nationhood. But we also have to recognize that however much, for example, we don't really want to talk about class in American history, the American working class, for most of our history, had limited, if no, civil and political rights. In the early period of industrialization, that included enslaved people who were growing cotton. It included women and children who were the main labor force in textile mills. Later on, it included a lot of European immigrants or Chinese laborers who were denied any rights. And except for a brief period, I would say, during World War II and into the 1960s, when the working class was much wider, more native born. Then, of course, we deal with the working class as we do today, which is people of color, people who are immigrants, some of whom are undocumented, and of course, poor white folk as well. And for whom all of these people, for whom the idea of liberal democracy is something that has really not been in their experience. We might talk about Trump violating liberal democratic norms, but that's a luxury for people who largely are white and of the middle and upper class, not for most Americans who have had to struggle desperately for their rights, and in some ways did us the favor of showing a really a true and expansive notion of democracy.
Oh, that's fascinating too, and you point out all of these different facets of illiberalism, of the sort of exclusionary policy, either stated or implied, or just de facto. So many left out. It's funny, growing up through the decade of the '60s, I really did feel like, wow, this is intense. I mean, as just a little kid, but I knew, cities are on fire and all this stuff was going on. I grew up in Washington, D.C., so I was very close to, policymakers. My dad worked for the government, et cetera. So I had a sense that we were evolving past, even as awful as the assassinations of Martin Luther King and RFK were, and JFK for that matter. But I felt like, wow, the civil rights movement is putting us all together. Finally, there is this recognition that we're all one people, we all bleed red, whatever. But what your book points out so beautifully is the reaction to that is just as strong. And that's the way it's always been. The backbeat is always there.
I grew up in the 60s too, and I share your idea and sense that you thought you were in a world that was in the process of great change. And for the most part, it was change moving in a very positive direction, that rights were expanding, that the prospects of people who had not had opportunities in American life and elsewhere in the world might have them, and that we were part, you could see yourself as part of making a new world. And, we discovered that it wasn't quite that way. And I think the disillusionment that came out of it for a lot of people, sort of fractured American politics in a lot of directions. And as you said, it because the 60s is associated with a certain kind of liberalism and political radicalism, we failed to see what was also going on, which was the, rebirth of the radical right, and people like George Wallace, who I don't think has been sufficiently recognized as someone who really anticipated someone like Trump in the directions that we've been going in.
Yeah, you talk about George Wallace in your book, and you talk about David Duke in your book. I mean, remind everybody who David Duke was and how popular he was.
Yeah. David Duke is someone that we really have to reckon with. David Duke was grew up in Louisiana, just outside of New Orleans. He was in the Ku Klux Klan, and he was a neo-Nazi. And in the late 1980s, he decided, while he was still in the Klan, to run for the Louisiana state legislature. He managed to get a seat, and then he ran for governor of the state and senator. And in both cases, he put on a very formidable campaign. For governor, he came pretty close. And in all cases, even though it was known that he was a white supremacist, it was known that he was an anti-Semite, it was known that he, wanted to repress minorities and perhaps establish a white ethno-state, nearly 60% of the white population voted for him. And so you look at that, Pat Buchanan, when he came along a few years later, said to the Republican Party, you should take note of this, because this is someone who clearly has the wind, political wind in his sails. Duke is still around and, has always been very, has been very pleased about Trump's ascendancy and the, far right now.
I mean, he doesn't talk like a backwoods hillbilly. You know what I mean? It's
no, he got coiffed. He went from sort of Klansman, and he got a better haircut. He got stylish clothing, and he tried to present himself as somebody who deserved, to sit in these political seats.
This is something I'm seeing in the chat, and I was going to get to it anyway, so I will ask you now, because you really do. You're a historian, and so you historically contextualize all of these things, and January 6th fits into the timeline. And so the question comes, was January 6th anomalous? Was it an outlier? It was such an inflection moment in this country's evolution and history, or does it fit quite neatly into what you're talking about?
That's a great question. And what I think it points to is the need for us to recognize the multiple levels of American politics. Now, certainly January 6th and the political attack on the Capitol, didn't really have a precedent since the War of 1812. But on the state level, there have been numerous cases of divided government, certainly during Reconstruction, of legislators being expelled from their legislatures, of duly elected officials being run out of office, of dual governments contending for power, and of the storming of legislatures and the likes. And in many, many parts of the country, there were what you might call authoritarian enclaves, small areas, smaller towns, rural areas, that were basically run by a handful of very wealthy people. Look, George Wallace, for all his talk about state rights, ran almost an autocratic regime in Alabama, where he handed out, he controlled, institutions in the state. He handed out goodies to people who were his loyalists, and he punished those who weren't. He especially, obviously, was very tough on those who might be sympathetic to civil rights, but it was not a democratic regime at all. And so part of what we need to recognize is that, what you see at the national level is not necessarily what exists at the local level, where, look, the Ku Klux Klan was the most powerful social and political movement of the 1920s. And in many places, the Klan itself, or sympathizers, controlled state and local politics, and had, people who were members or sympathizers all the way up into the Supreme Court of the United States. So, we have to kind of step back and recognize that, this is American politics too.
It's interesting because what you've talked about just now is a reflection of a sort of a new template that I'm seeing, at least in my life, which is totally denying the outcome of an election, the people's voice. We've always seen, and you detailed in your book, ways in which the people's voice has been suppressed, in selective ways and in broad ways. But this idea somehow that elections, and you maybe think about it, the state elections, local elections, that, if you don't get the outcome you want, you simply scream and yell and sue about the outcome. And if you can get a big enough coalition,
or you disfranchise your opponents,
sure,
which is,
sure,
a means that worked in northern cities as well as southern states in the late, 19th century, early 20th century, and is in many ways responsible for the steep decline in voter turnout in the 20th century. So you're right. It has to do with a lot of these issues. The United States Congress in the post-Civil War period had many, many investigations into elections that took place in the southern states because of complaints, grievances about fraud and fraudulent stuffing of ballot box, intimidating of voters, and so on and so forth. And if you really want to know what's going on in these places, these investigations have hundreds and hundreds of pages of testimonies, which really lay it out in horrifying detail.
Well, some of these southern states really have taken it to high art, this voter disenfranchisement. Question is, if Trump is a symptom and not the root of America's problem, well, he's certainly not the root of America's problem, but more to the point, what is the root, and how do we fix it is the question.
Well, those are two very big questions, and I don't think there is a route. I think it has to do with changing circumstances of economic and social life. It has to do with new demographies of race and ethnicity. It has to do, obviously, in recent decades, with the decline of industrial society, not only in the United States, but in Western Europe itself, and the toll that it took on working people who had managed to build middle-class styles of lives and who found themselves basically cast out. I think it has to do with political parties that became more and more dependent on wealthy supporters. And I'm talking about both, political parties. And so, this is a rollout that helps us understand why Trump, why then. But it also should remind us that these really tap into what you might call a whole reservoir of ideas and ways of thinking about how the world is working and how the world should work, who should be in charge and who shouldn't be in charge, hierarchies that people accept. I mean, I think there are a lot of people who basically believe in freedom for themselves, but have no problem submitting to an autocrat, so long as the autocrat seems to be, supportive of their views and their ambitions, which I think why Trump has managed to be as successful as he has.
Yeah, it's interesting because in that answer to that question is so much of what your book is, which is it's about all of these things. It's not just about one thing. And I wonder if we can just spend one beat, because I think the wrestling with race underpins a lot.
Absolutely.
And it's also kind of easier to understand sometimes than some of these other exclusionary policies that are a bit more nuanced maybe. But I did want to spend a beat with you, Steven, on this the post-Roe era, because that was also reaction to, which is something that you talk about a lot in your book, the reaction to how the pendulum swing can produce some of these things that have always been there, but then they really show themselves in reaction to whatever's going on.
Right. You mean the post-Roe decision.
Right.
Certainly part of what's going on in the 1970s that's fortified by a growing anti-feminism has to do with what sort of rights movements are recognized as challenging, traditional ways of organizing people's lives. We, in many ways, need to understand what it is that they find so upsetting. And, even in the case of Roe, it actually took quite a while for the right, even the evangelical right, to focus on the abortion issue. And a lot of it had to do with seeing an alliance with American Catholics. And this is really a great change in American politics because anti-Catholicism is incredibly deep. And, as you probably remember, in 1960, John F. Kennedy, the first Catholic who's elected president, had to go before a convention of Protestant ministers and explain that he was not a puppet of the Pope. So, I do think that it was kind of a confluence of circumstances. A lot of it had to do with migrations of African Americans out of the South. It had to do with post-World War II housing shortages, how neighborhoods were sort of marking sort of tense and boundaries for themselves. And so even before the explosions of the 1960s, there was a lot of racial tension in many of our large cities. And there's no question that people like George Wallace, really sensed this. And he managed very quickly to attract a real base of support outside the South. Not I mean, it was in Wisconsin, or it was in Indiana, or it was in Maryland. And, you know, by 1968, a lot of this had to do with working people who felt that, you know, their interests were not being attended to by the government, that the federal government was overreaching on behalf of constituencies that didn't deserve it. And so, you know, this begins unfortunately, a sort of wave that leads to the era of mass incarceration, which, you know, as you know, is not only a matter of expelling people from their communities, but expelling them from political society, because not only can't they vote, you know, when they're incarcerated, but in many states, they can't vote after they're released until parole and debts are paid off. And, you know, if in Florida, I think there are close to 1 million for ex-felons, people who have been released, who have been denied voting rights. So, you know, we need to, kind of reckon with that as well.
And that's become a political talking point, of course. You know, you can't say, I think that those people have paid a debt to society, they should get a vote. That becomes, a political demerit, you know, if you make that point, you know. Yeah. So in conclusion, I'd love to have you back, because this is a great conversation. You're a great historian.
Anytime you want, I'm happy to come back. Always happy to talk to you.
So I want to ask you kind of, this reminds me of when I was in therapy for whatever it was, 5 years or whatever, and I'm finally to the therapist, I asked, okay, I get it. So I understand all of these different things that that influence who I am and how I act and how I react, but what do I do about it? Okay. And so as I was reading your book, I had the same thought, like, gosh, this is all really a part of the texture of this place that I love, America. But what do I do about these things that are part of the texture? Or is it just, as the therapist told me,
learn to
knowing it, being aware of it, knowing it will help it get better? I ask you, Steven Hahn.
Well, that's a very important question, and obviously not an easy one to answer. What I will say is that I think people's politics can be very volatile and very multifaceted. I think most people in most groups don't fit into neat boxes and categories. And over the course of American history, you have seen people who at one moment, there are interesting cases of Albert Parsons, who of Haymarket fame, fought for the Confederacy during the Civil War, ended up marrying a formerly enslaved woman and moving to Chicago and becoming an anarchist. So I'm simply saying that people who had been apolitical or had conservative politics, then under certain circumstances, open their minds to other things. Remember, in 2016, there were quite a number of people who, like both Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. They felt that both Trump and Sanders kind of understood what they were facing. And, we don't know what would have happened had, Sanders been the Democratic nominee. I don't think he would have won the election, but in any event. So I do think we have to recognize that politics is something that develops, and that what we do need is a vision for going forward. What kind of world do we want to live in, and what kind of coalitions can we form with people recognizing that there's no winning coalition that doesn't include people whose views do not entirely comport with our own. We have to share a vision, and then we have to learn about each other and to trust each other and to work together. And I think in that process, maybe, we can be in a better place than we are now.
Yeah, the perfect is the enemy of the good. And
yes, well put. We can't all fit through the eye of a needle.
There you go. Illiberal America. Great book. Steven, I so enjoyed talking to you. I look forward to the next time.
Thank you. And to you too. All the best.
All the best to you. And we'll have a link to your book and the purchase of the book under this video. Steven Hahn. Thanks, Steven.
Thank you.
All right. So long, sir.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
All right, everybody behave. I've got another Pulitzer Prize winner coming through in a second. I just want to mention our meetup. It's a virtual meetup, the June Swoon meetup. I think it's the first of the year. You can join us from wherever you are. It'll be on Thursday, June 26th at 6:30 Pacific time, 9:30 in the East. You'll join for 2 magical hours of swooning with special guests. We'll ask a lot of our regulars if they can come by and spend a few minutes, and even those who are not regulars on the show. It's a $50 donation to PayPal. You'll go to PayPal. There are links to PayPal under this video and also on our website, themarkthompsonshow.com. And just put in the $50 donation and then note with it that it's for June Swoon or virtual meetup or however you want to put it. And then RSVP to us also if you would, to let us know you did it. mtsmeetup@gmail.com. mtsmeetup@gmail.com. Again, it's the 26th, 2 great hours. We love hanging out with the audience. It's not broadcast, so it will only exist in that forum, and people can be a little more unvarnished, and it can be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to it, and I hope that you will join us. We've told you June Swoon is coming. Start
the Mark Thompson
swooning
Show.
with us. This guy is a best-selling author, Pulitzer Prize winner, co-founder of DCReport.org, lectures on the law and taxes and government, and you've seen him worldwide in media. And right now, he's very much sought after for a lot of what's happening, both in America and in the Middle East as well, and worldwide. I've left out Ukraine. As I say, he's a professor at RIT. How about it for David Cay Johnston?
Hello, Mark. Good to see you.
Good to see you, sir, and thank you as always. So I want to jump right into what's happening in the Middle East. Give me your take on where we are in this and what might likely happen.
Well, last night, Donald made a sort of classically imprudent post on his Truth Social that certainly created the reasonable assumption that a nuke was going to be dropped on Tehran. Everybody should evacuate immediately. And there's no weapon that would require a whole city of millions of people to evacuate except a nuclear weapon. Now, that's apparently not what's going on, but I think it's indicative of Donald's incompetence and his failure to understand the significance of the words from whoever is at the top. And it isn't any organization that's true. I mean, if you work for a corporation, the top person's words get scrutinized and reacted to very quickly. We're more likely than not to see this tit for tat between Israel and Iran get worse. Netanyahu is working very hard to hold on to his position. And remember, he's facing serious prison time if convicted of the corruption charges. And the Iranians seem to be somewhat tone deaf to what's going on around them in the world. The Iranian enmity for the U.S. is entirely our fault. We earned it, and we're getting the result of it. But this is not good, and it's clearly got the Saudis spooked. And they're the country with whom we are, politically and with Trump most heavily aligned, along with the Qataris, who host our major Middle East military command.
I was saying earlier, David, that the idea that's been articulated and sort of thought to be the plan on the part of Iran is to develop this nuclear capability and then to actually export it to surrogates like the Houthis and even Hezbollah in Lebanon, although that they've been degraded substantially. But the idea was that was the blueprint, and that the Israelis, at least this is their claim, that they have to derail this now because of Iran's weakness in this moment. Iran has also not the strength that they had even a year ago, right?
Right. Well, okay. So a couple of things here. The good news is let me do the bad news first. The bad news is you don't need to build a nuclear bomb to create havoc. You can create a dirty bomb. All you need to do is spread long-lasting elements. The good news is that we have incredibly detailed radioactive background maps of the entire US and most of the world. So if somebody wants to move nuclear materials, we're capable of noticing that and tracking it. So you don't need to worry that somebody's going to go walking through Market Street in San Francisco or Midtown Manhattan spreading some kind of nuclear material. They'll get spotted immediately. This all came out when the Olympics were coming to LA, and I wrote about this in the LA Times and some magazines back in the 1984. I'm not sure if I actually got it in the LA Times, because a lot of my stuff I wanted to do then about nuclear threats was cut, but I wrote in some magazines on the side about this, what's called NEST, Nuclear Emergency something team. The Israelis, of course, clearly have nuclear weapons. I mean, they won't say one way or the other. They're being coy about it. They clearly have nuclear weapons. Any use of nuclear weapons is going to change the whole world political environment. And I've warned as far back as the early 1980s that if we end up with any kind of a nuclear contest back and forth, doesn't have to be the major powers, the risk we would run is of the imposition of a global military dictatorship to control those weapons. And so we should be very concerned about any effort by any country to use nuclear weapons. And the military, at least before Pete Hegseth, I have no idea under him what's going on, does all sorts of gaming of potential conflicts. My daughter, who's Rod Serling's biographer, found out that he had been involved in nuclear gaming along with some other creative people from Hollywood in 1960, and they did a scenario that is eerily like Osama bin Laden 40 years later. And in gaming these things out, they've looked at all these kinds of scenarios. I mean, they apparently have even done what if Santiago and Buenos Aires had nuclear weapons and went after each other as a gaming exercise. And the conclusion of a lot of these things is that anybody who breaks with what's been the tradition since Nagasaki in the summer of 1945 would create global pressure to impose some kind of global military dictatorship to control weapons like that. Of course, there are other kinds of weapons. You can weaponize pernicious viruses. You can weaponize bacteria. So the focus, I think, in the world really needs to be on, we've got to get past war.
Sure.
It's been part of human culture from day one, but we need to somehow begin to move people past this and to think in terms of building a better world, not in terms of your military control and authority.
Well, that's such a great goal. It seems as though at least this country is going the other way. America. I mean, we're not building coalitions. In the first week that Donald Trump took office, he was smack talking the Canadians, the Mexicans, the Chinese. I mean, it was he's going to either invade Greenland or buy it. I mean, I don't mean to have Trump derangement syndrome, but just in response to what David Cay Johnston is saying, it doesn't seem as though the posture is anti-war. It seems quite confrontational.
Well, Donald has used more than $500 million worth of bombs on the Houthi rebels in Yemen, and it hasn't affected what they're doing. And that's not surprising if you've read at least the summaries of the bombing studies done at the end of World War II, which concluded that all the bombing, and remember, we firebombed Dresden. That's what one of Kurt Vonnegut's novels is about. We turned Tokyo, a wooden city, into a city of nothing but ashes. And the military officials who studied the bombing in World War II concluded it was a waste of time and money. It was not successful. People kept producing, and some of them died, but it was not effective. Hitler made a huge mistake when he put all that money into the V-1, which was sort of the prototype for cruise missiles, and then the V-2 rocket, which had almost no effect. The V-2s, didn't even carry a payload. It was the unburnt fuel that was the damage. And if he put that money instead into building, tanks and bombers, he might have fighter planes. I'm sorry, he might have had slowed down the eventual loss of the war from his side. I mean, thank goodness he made these stupid decisions. But we in the rest of the world, Donald Trump is seen as this crazy man who's not to be trusted. I've said on your show since about March 1st that Donald is effectively our dictator. He's just consolidating power. That's accepted wisdom when I'm on TV programs in Europe. Yeah, America is no longer a free country. America is a fascist dictatorship. And I don't understand how Americans haven't woken up to this enough, how they don't realize that, for example, having masked men with no insignia grab people off the street. I will be shocked if we don't find out that at least one young woman has been ripped off the street by sexual predators.
It's already happened. We've found.
Oh, it has. Okay.
Oh, yes, it's happened.
Okay.
You're absolutely right, and you've noted that in prior conversations, and you're absolutely right. It's happening.
Yeah, and it's so. This is really terrible, and I'm shocked that frankly the turnout in the parade in the demonstration Saturday, depending on who you talk to, it was 5 million people or 11 million people. There's not really a good count, but it's not enough. If you want to change the country, you need at least 3.5% of the population to turn out. Well, that's 12 to 15 million people, depending on how you want to count. And we're not getting enough people there. Now, some of the MAGA voters are having buyer's remorse. Voters' remorse. And we're seeing that. But all of this is sort of on the margin. Oh, please don't take our farm workers or our slaughterhouse workers. It's not, hey, something is really, really wrong here. And unfortunately, you have this weakling, Mike Johnson, as speaker, and this other weakling, John Thune, the senator from the Dakotas, who is the majority leader in the Senate. And they lack any spine whatsoever to stand up to Donald Trump. I mean, this is so much so that, Mike Lee, the super conservative, right-wing, very fascistic in his views, senator from Utah, blamed liberals for the assassinations and attempted assassinations in Minnesota when the guy is a Trumper through and through. So there's no regard for fact. There's no regard for the well-being of ordinary people. And today in the New York Times, there's a remarkable piece of reporting. Starts on the front page, entire page inside, and half of another page about what's going on at Social Security. And it is, you can get, if you just register at nytimes.com, you can get 10 free articles a month. Go sit down and read this piece. It will tell you what they're doing and how they're doing it and how they don't care about facts. You know, you've seen Jeanine Pirro saying there's 2-year-olds and 6-month-old babies getting Social Security. Obviously, it's fraud. No, they're orphans. There are people in Social Security database who are 300 years old. Yeah, that's why nobody's getting paid. Those were very inexpensive and effective.
Talking points, propaganda. I mean, and it's dominating the news cycle. You know, David, you see it in the cabinet appointments. These are people who are on television. I was noting that Hegseth was on Fox News Channel last night. This is at the same time that Donald Trump has to, run out of the G7 and get back to Washington and meet with his cabinet officials. Oh, one of them's, though, over at the studios right now doing a talking head with Fox News Channel. I mean, it's and most of that, by the way, was celebrating the Army anniversary and the parade. Most of that interview was about that. So it wasn't even in reference to the crisis so much. But they have a premium on that propaganda you're talking about. I want to ask you.
Did you tell your audience about the fact that there were ads offering people money to fill the stands at the parade on Saturday? The stands were still pretty empty because what they offered people was a cryptocurrency of some kind, apparently. But if you look at the videos, very few people turned out for this parade. Very few.
Oh, I mean, the whole thing was, and of course, the latest news out of that is that Trump was excoriating Hegseth and angry that the parade wasn't a greater success, and he really laid it all at the feet of Hegseth.
That's because Donald's never responsible for anything that goes wrong, only things that go right.
A miserable idea. I wanted to ask just a question that had been in the chat about the 3.5% rule, that if you can just get 3.5% of the population out, that you can build a political change. There it is. Curious about David Cay Johnston's thoughts on protest numbers. 5 million people is 1.5% of the country. Doesn't seem like a whole lot. Look up the study on 3.5% protest rule. Can you talk to Billy about that?
Well, there's some statistical evidence political scientists have put together showing that that's sort of the tipping point number of the crowd she needs to turn out. But we have to have massive turnouts way beyond what we saw on Saturday if there's going to be any change. This is not going to scare the Republicans into finding wherever they parked their spines, if assuming they had one, or their morality or their courage. It's just not enough to change that. So whether it's 3.5% or it's 10%, it should be shocking to us that so few Americans are reacting the way they are. I mean, if you are a Christian, to be clear, I'm not a believer, all right? But I've been a consultant to 5 major denominations and spoken repeatedly at some of the biggest and best divinity schools in America on moral issues. But if you're a Christian, how can you possibly support this ripping parents away from their children who've committed no offense, this conspiracy, and that's what it is, by the government to, you show up for your court hearing, the administrative law judge dismisses the case so they can arrest you and you step into the hallway. ICE literally left a 3-year-old child at least once in the back of a vehicle while hauling off the mother. If you or I did that when we were the parent, we could well be prosecuted for that. And there are people who nobody can find them. They basically have been disappeared. And I don't want to mislead people. I don't think that we're doing like Argentina did, throwing people out of airplanes at 18,000 feet over the ocean. But there are people who the system can't find. And lawyers saying, where's this person? And they're not getting responses, or not for days. If you are a Christian, this should be unbelievably offensive to you. You're supposed to welcome the stranger. You're supposed to take care of the unfortunate. You're supposed to have regard, that word I want to get back in our public conversation, regard for the other. And at the same time, you're seeing a flourishing of all sorts of craziness. Kim Boren sent me a little note about the vote result lawsuit going on in Rockland County, New York. And I would just point out that the lawsuit's brought by followers of the late Lyndon LaRouche, who I would characterize as crazies.
Right. But I would love to double back to that another time. There were potential revelations from that lawsuit, or potential pieces of information that might be worthwhile, or maybe they all fall into the category of crazy. But I'd love to talk about it another time.
The lawsuit will be further along in September when the next big court hearing is held.
Yeah. I wanted to just mention to you this Tulsi Gabbard thing, because Trump has gone back against her, essentially. And her position is that Iran was not actively pursuing a nuclear weapon. Okay. She's head of intelligence, right?
Right.
And Trump, when confronted with this, says, I don't care what Tulsi Gabbard said. I think they are very close to having one. And wondering if Gabbard, who is in over her head to begin with, as you have pointed out before, wondering if it will matter, or maybe this doesn't move the meter at all. I mean, Trump's his own guy, the expert on everything, as you've said. So I don't know that he even pays attention to any of this stuff.
Well, he doesn't understand the things because he doesn't have the broader education and context to put these things in context. The New York Times piece I mentioned about Social Security actually goes to this Tulsi Gabbard, Donald Trump dust-up, because the opening anecdote is about how Trump had said that because Elon Musk told him this, 40% of the calls to Social Security phone lines were scammers. And this middle-level bureaucrat who they put in as temporary head of Social Security because he agreed he'd do whatever Donald wanted said, well, that's not true, whereupon he gets a screaming phone call from Katie Miller at the White House saying you never contradict the president. 40% of the calls are scams. Facts and reality have no bearing on what Trump is going to do. People need to keep that in mind. And if he gets, the last person who spoke to him puts in his head some crazy idea, we better drop a bunker buster bomb on the Iranian parliament the next day they're going to meet, or maybe we should bomb their holiest of synagogue of mosques in the religious city whose name I can't remember at the moment in Iran. He may do something like that. I mean, he's a loose cannon. He doesn't know anything. He has no sense of how to get events to happen in the world. And of course, we're all seeing, the Ukraine war is not over after one day. Gaza continues. People continue to be not able to get food or medicine at levels that are needed to sustain the society. And in Africa, where we were the biggest trading partner with many of the countries in Africa, now the Chinese are, and they are replacing us in humanitarian aid so that people will love Beijing, the communist dictatorship in Beijing, not the United States of America. He's destroying the world as we've known it. And I don't get that people aren't waking up to this and saying, we got to do something. We got to remove this guy.
I mean, I think that the people who show up on Saturday and no King's marches, etc., the fever is intense.
Yes.
The anger is intense. The reality is hitting all of us. But we silo so beautifully now in this new media environment that, again, I don't know that the Joe Rogan show is doing much on this. And to be fair to Joe Rogan, I think he has come out against some of these deportations and just how people are scooped up and deported. But it's a slow process of any of that stuff ever making it through like the Fox News Channel ecosphere.
Well, in fact, I watch Fox so that you don't have to from time to time. And it is astonishing that CNN and MSNBC will be talking about some important Trump issue, and you turn to Fox and it's about something completely irrelevant to all of that because it's an issue that's troublesome for Trump. And if I only watched Fox, Breitbart, One America News, I would think things are fantastic, that our Lord and Savior has emerged in the person of Donald Trump, and everything's going to be hunky-dory. It's just astonishing, the disconnect between reality and what these places are doing.
It also, but I think, and I'm so glad that you made the point earlier in this conversation, it's so relevant that his party is checked out. His party has enabled all of this. So you see nothing but this supplicance that has just permitted his extensive power to flex in ways that he never thought perhaps, or maybe he wanted to, but never had achieved in term one, season one.
Well, and also in season two here, term two, he has surrounded himself with zealots who are finding ways to do all sorts of things that are illegal or dubious. And they're flooding with so many things going on. There's no way anybody can keep track of all of them. But they are working very hard on making sure that your ability to get recompense if you're wronged by a corporation or by the government is being diminished. That your children will listen, like it or not, to a brand of Christianity when they go to public school, at least in some states, that you will not have access to books in the library. And this is such a childish administration that 2 weeks ago we saw Caroline Leavitt, the 20-something White House press secretary, say that the Librarian of Congress was removed because of books they were giving children. You can't even get in the building unless you're 16 years old. It was absurd. And by the way, there's some arguments being made. I think I put one of them on my Facebook feed by librarians that this removal of the Librarian of Congress is much more significant than you might think because of its attack on intellectual property and on ideas. I'm not sure I'm totally sold on it, but I think it's an interesting idea to watch. And just keep in mind that the people around Trump who were most loyal to him, they have no interest in democracy. By the way, yesterday, the day before, someone sent me a series of clips from someone who'd gone out to interview people on the street who are Trumpers. And I was astonished at a number of them who said, I don't care if Donald Trump kills people. That's fine. He could walk out of the White House and shoot somebody and I'd still want him to be president. Yeah, Donald should be our dictator. We'd be better off with a dictator. My goodness, what in the world?
Yeah. I mean, this really is a cult. It is cultism. And, you've covered this guy so many years, decades, covering Donald Trump. And, you can, as I've mentioned, look at David's books through the years and you see the brute force with which he tries to negotiate and navigate business. And at the same time, it must be some charm. You've called him the greatest con man,
Yeah, he's the greatest con man in the history of the world. And notice something else going on here. The Senate Republicans are not going along with the House on the big, beautiful, or as I would call it, big, ugly bill. But Donald said he was going to stop taxing Social Security. Now, I get Social Security, so I have an interest here, all right? But Ronald Reagan put in taxing Social Security as part of his massive shift where he's remembered by millions of Americans as the guy who cut taxes. They forget that he 11 times raised taxes on working class, middle class, upper middle class people. And one of them was taxing your Social Security benefits if you make more than an incredibly small income. Well, that's nowhere in either bill in the House or Senate. They just sort of, we're not doing that. If there was any reform that could, in the long run, help the Republicans gain votes, it would be saying we're not going to tax your Social Security benefits, or putting in a new rule that says, we start taxing them when you make $500,000, $1 million a year, something like that, where the benefits therefore are irrelevant to your financial well-being. And there's so much going on that even if you diligently get up every morning, as I do, and I look at 8 newspapers online and I get the New York Times home delivered here in Rochester, New York, you can't follow everything, but they're not doing what they got elected to do.
Sure.
That's the key thing people need to, and the Democrats really need to, they need more Congressman Stansberry's, more Elizabeth Warren's. They need to find some younger leaders to deal with their gerontocracy problem.
Sure.
People my age should not be in the leadership. It should be people your age.
Yeah, it's true. Let me just speak for older boys and girls. Bernie Sanders is amazing. I mean, Bernie Sanders, you saw the latest polling, David, on trusted figures in American politics. Bernie Sanders is number one.
He is. And the problem with Bernie, and I've known Bernie for many years, I got to speak to him briefly in Washington in February, is he's a great person to raise issues and to rabble-rouse. He's a terrible manager. He's just a terrible manager. And the job of being president is fundamentally being a manager. And we need to keep that in mind. But the Democrats need to find leaders. Human beings are herd animals. We follow leaders. People followed Mussolini. They followed Hitler. They followed Ronald Reagan. If you listened carefully to what he said, hey, by the way, I want to destroy the New Deal that created this prosperous middle class, and I want rich people to be much better off.
Yeah, but it's the way he said it.
It's the way he said it. And here's Donald Trump who's saying, I'm going to destroy this for everybody who isn't super rich already. I'm going to make you give up all sorts of government benefits that makes the system work so that people who already have $1 billion can pay even less in taxes. And he's getting people to follow him. The Democrats have got to find leaders. It's not going to be AOC. She is the young rabble-rouser version of Bernie, and she's really good. I would love to see Katie Porter emerge as that leader, but I don't think that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. She might become governor of California. That would be a frankly good thing for California. But somebody, whether it's Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, Pete Buttigieg, somebody we haven't even heard about. The Democrats need to find a couple of leaders who are younger, who are incredibly thoughtful, and who can talk to people at their own level. That's a crucial element in this, is talking to people at a level that they understand.
I also think that there's so many things that the libs stand for that poll very well, especially as right. I mean, so I don't understand why we have this recoiling from either the liberal agenda and getting it out there and speaking about it, or even the label.
Well, because of the history of this country, there is sort of a knee-jerk reaction against popular liberal ideas. Remember, when there was an effort to get child labor laws in the beginning of the last century, and the first set of child labor laws were thrown out by the Supreme Court, there were literally ministers, because I've read articles about their lectures, who would go around saying, it is God's plan that these 5-year-old children work in the factories, and those who oppose this are the agents of the devil. I mean, there's no bad idea that you can't find religious leaders out there pushing, including that slavery is the right thing to do.
Sure.
And there are still people in this country pushing ideas like that. So I really don't believe, Mark, we're going to see significant change until red state voters, who are the ones who rely most on government for funding of their medical benefits, their Social Security, et cetera, that until terrible things happen to people, and I shouldn't have to come to this, but people need to react on a visceral level.
Sure.
You're not going to organize people around the intellectual ideas you and I are talking about. They have to hit people in a visceral level, in their gut.
That's why the economy usually cuts through for the same reason. J.B. Pritzker has pointed out that from Illinois, he's another one who is sort of a rising star within the party, might have that presidential stuff. And Champagne Wishes says you need someone who's going to win the middle of the country, which is kind of what you're saying. The red states have to jump on board.
And J.B. Pritzker, if you're going to say, well, he's fat, well, so's Donald. And he's a billionaire. The Pritzkers are very, very wealthy as a family. But he certainly has shown that he has a moral core. And that's something that's not only missing from Donald, but he's managed to suppress or extinguish it in the leaders of the Republican Party. In the long run, assuming we keep our democracy, assuming we're able to put a stop to what Trump's doing, and that's not certain at this point, the Republicans should pay a terrible price for what's happened here. They should go the way of the Whigs in 1856. After the presidential election in 1856, nobody ever heard of the Whigs again because they got it wrong on the Civil War. But so far, that's not what we're seeing. And the notion that Donald keeps saying, now we're respected around the rest of the world, absolute nonsense. And I'll tell you that as somebody who does overseas TV now 5-6 times a week. And I just listen to the tone of how the questions have changed over the last year. And it's not friendly to Trump anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rest of the world looks at America and just scratches their collective heads. We're running out of time. We're really out of time, so I'm not going to hold you, but I do want to pick up on this next time. It's funny what we've ended up with, which is a question of, voters and when they'll realize certain things and what America is really about, the hate that is in America, the divided nature of our politics. That is something that we were talking about in the first hour as sort of baked in all along the way in that Steven Hahn book, which I recommend as well. It's really terrific. And it points to the fact that this isn't a new thing. David, we have to overcome something that is so much in the texture of who we are as a country. It's a tall task, I guess.
Absolutely. And just don't forget, there's many societies, Native Americans and others, argue that it takes 7 generations for a complete turnover of an idea, because the handing down of ideas. I mean, you don't know your great-great-great-grandparents, and it'd be extraordinary if you knew your great-grandparents. But many of the people who came and settled this country from Europe came here because they were excluded from the guilds, the proto-unions of the past. And so, surprise, surprise, there's a lot of antipathy to unions built into the culture. People who can't tell you why, just unions bad. As Pope Francis said, there is no economic justice without unions, because ordinary people don't have any economic power except as a group. And until we overcome that, we're going to continue to see wages not keeping pace with inflation, not keeping pace with productivity, and the resources being redistributed to the people already at the very top who have more than they can ever consume.
It just stands to reason that as a collective, you have more power. And so it is. Thanks so much for allowing us to go over time. Great to talk to you, and look forward to next week. David Cay Johnston, everybody. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Feels great.
When they raided Mar-a-Lago, God didn't like that.
Right on, right on, right on. Loving it. Again, I want to see you. You don't have to have your camera on. Like, I know we're doing like a big Zoom with those who want to join us in the audience. You don't have to have your camera on. I want you to feel like, I hate that thing where you're in a 2-hour meeting. This is a 2-hour meetup. We're calling it June Swoon. We did one last year also, and it was really successful and a lot of fun. But I hate that feeling. Like, imagine Kim has to sit there for 2 hours during our show and look kind of interested in what I'm saying. I mean, it's just like, what? I'm just saying that, you know those meetings where
Kim, how are
you
you?
have to sit there and keep your camera face on. You don't need to do that with us. You can join, have your camera off, and just hang out. You can just speak, and you can let your audio do the talking. You know what I mean? But we'd love to have you join us. It's called June Swoon. Again, I'll just review quickly how you join us if you want to join on the 26th. It's Thursday evening, June 26th. It's a virtual meetup. 6:30 Pacific time is when it starts. 9:30 in the East. Shout out to the East Coast. Come on, East Coasters. Stay up late. It'll be a 9:30 to 11:30 on the East Coast, 6:30 to 8:30 in the West. 2 hours of June swooning with special guests joining. Here's how you make it happen. $50 donation on our PayPal page. There are links to PayPal under all our videos and also on our website, themarkthompsonshow.com. And then when you make that donation, just note June Swoon. It'll have a little place you can put it in there. But if you can't find that little place, just RSVP no matter what. Whether you've put in a notation or not, RSVP, please, because this helps us keep clear who's coming. mtsmeetup@gmail.com. Again, mtsmeetup@gmail.com. RSVP after you've locked up your seat with the donation. It is June Swoon. It's going to be big, big, big. Don't you think, Kim?
I think it's going to be big. Fun.
Yeah.
Look at that great artwork. Did you see that picture? That was great.
Was that AI, Kim?
No, that was all me.
Wow.
I know. Wow. Isn't that summary?
I really?
What?
That was you? You didn't use AI to make that, Kim?
No.
Girl, you just woo.
You really are. Wow.
I know. It was very inappropriate.
Well, I just had to ask the question. I had to ask the question. I'm still, if I can just be honest, I'm questioning the testimony of the witness a little bit. I don't know. That's just all right.
That's not fake. That's real.
I guess it is real. All right. Very, very good.
Is that like
thank you,
Trump
Kim.
questioning Tulsi Gabbard? I mean,
Oh, well,
just disregarding my statement.
Oh, girl, baby girl.
Don't even play. Yeah. It's a masterpiece, says Dillette. I only wish she's not being this way. I wish you were being sarcastic when you said that. I really do. Kim, it's a masterpiece. I love all of your work.
Well,
Put it up there again, Tony. June Swoon.
Mark said,
Jane O says, wow, Kim, love the graphic.
Thank you.
I wish you guys were being sarcastic, but you're not. You're being sincere.
I make some June Swoon things for Mark, and they have flowers and sunshines, a little summary thing. And he sends back a message. No, I want it plain.
No,
this is not your time.
Now you're being super unfair to me. You know that's not what I was saying.
Don't talk to me that way.
Exactly. What I was saying was, and here's exactly what happened. This is unreal how I have to set things. This is anyway. Why do I have to put up with this, Tony? These people do not.
You know who I am?
They don't realize.
Kind of a big deal.
People don't realize that I'm so fair let me tell you exactly what happened. Kim sent a graphic to me with all the information that you see about, it's going to be June 26th, 6:30 to 8:30, all of that information.
Sure.
Here's how you do it, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But coexisting on that same graphic was sunshine and flowers. And I said, it's too busy.
Yeah,
it's too busy. I said, I like the sunshine and flowers for the splash page, for what we have, for the first page. I love that. That's what we've done. Yeah. But the actual information can't compete with a bunch of other stuff on the graphic.
Yeah. No, I'm just giving you a hard time.
It was great. I loved it.
All right. Well, then, I'm just saying. And Trevor makes the point. He doesn't like it when mommy and daddy fight.
Oh.
Now I'm very late.
Mm.
I need to do Kim's news and wrap it up, and we need to bump Gary Baum to tomorrow, Tony.
We can skip news if you'd like to skip news. That's okay. It's up to you.
Gary's got a great novel out. I haven't read it yet, but I mean, I love the premise, which you'll learn. Go ahead. Tony's got the vote. Tony's got the vote. What to do, Tony? I kind of feel like I can go to Kim's news. Isn't there a spot for it tomorrow on the show? Can't we
I'll have to
run
send
it
it to
tomorrow?
Albert since I have it. So because I had to fix the beginning. I mean,
yeah, you'll have to
get inside baseball here, but I had to fix the beginning of it. So
Okay, so
Albert
let me
has to have the. I'll have to send it to him.
Okay. So let's do Kim's news, and we'll wrap up. I've got a few other stories, so we'll get an update of what's happening. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Smash the like button if you would.
Iron rod.
Smash it like a boss. Give us a thumbs up. Helps us in this world of YouTube. Costs you nothing. The other thing I want to mention to you is somebody was mentioning they're not getting notifications about when we have a video or when we're on. Where's that? I sent that to you, right?
The bell, right? Yeah. You click the bell.
The bell is
sure
where
checked.
You may want to turn off the bell and turn it back on again. YouTube can be a little funky and a little, right, Tony?
Yeah, it does that sometimes, but also what it does sometimes if they sent you enough notifications and if you didn't go to it every single time, it goes, we'll turn it off for you. And it's like, well, no, what? Yeah, so it does little things like that. So you just have to keep making sure that it's still set for notifications is all. That's all.
Yeah, so
it
that
just deactivates and internet does internet things.
Yeah, so subscribe and hit the notification bell. We're one of those shows that doesn't hit you a lot of notifications. I mean, a lot of these shows do like 19 videos a day. We don't. Yeah. So it's I think it's a good way to keep up on what we're doing on the show, and I hope you'll hit the notification bell. Again, it costs you nothing to do all that stuff. All right, Kim's news, and we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. President Trump is demanding Iran's unconditional surrender. In a new post, Trump warned, "We know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. We are not going to take him out, at least for now." That's a quote from X. Trump is meeting, or from Truth Social. Trump is meeting with his top
Trump's a true peacemaker. And he knows how to de-escalate a situation, doesn't he?
That's right. Trump meeting with his top national security advisors. Speculation continues to grow, though, that the United States may assist Israel's efforts to knock out Iran's underground nuclear facilities. Meanwhile, Fox News is reporting that the White House is considering a military strike against Iran, that a strike is on the table. The report comes after President Trump said he wanted unconditional surrender from Iran. There is an effort to limit U.S. involvement in the Iran-Israel conflict, and it has bipartisan support in Congress. Democratic Senator Tim Kaine introducing legislation yesterday that would block President Trump from using military force in Iran without Congress authorizing it. Meanwhile, Republican Congressman Thomas Massey introduced a war powers resolution today, stating Congress must decide such matters under the Constitution. Finally, someone realized
all of a sudden they're just in the Constitution. I mean,
we have having that conversation.
Exactly. Who is
imagine? How
Wow.
long the California National Guard will remain in Los Angeles is up to an appellate court today. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is hearing arguments over President Trump's federalizing of the California National Guard and deploying it to Los Angeles amid protests over immigration operations. Governor Gavin Newsom insists Trump's actions are illegal, the lawsuit claiming they both exceed the scope of the president's statutory authority and violate the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Newsom, LA Mayor Karen Bass, and other Democratic leaders believe or blame the unrest on the president's deployment of the National Guard and the U.S. Marines to Los Angeles. The Senate is still working through President Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill. Senate Majority Leader John Thune says he can afford to lose only 3 Republicans when the bill eventually goes to the Senate floor. Republicans are using a legislative procedure called reconciliation, which will get the bill passed with just a simple majority. MyPillow founder,
I just
CEO.
want to mention one thing. Reconciliation involves money typically. And so the idea that you have embedded in this bill stuff related to the power of the executive, like the executive doesn't have to conform to legal judgments that enjoin the executive from certain actions. There is doesn't have to the White House doesn't have to respond to subpoenas. There's a bunch of stuff in there, and I say a bunch, a handful, that are shoehorned in there that have nothing to do with money. And so the reconciliation thing, you can see how GOP plays fast and loose with that stuff. And so they're playing fast and loose as they're trying to get this one big, beautiful bill thing through the Senate. And they're getting some resistance. We'll see what survives. They're definitely changing it. But as I say, it's not all related to money.
MyPillow founder and CEO Mike Lindell is liable for defamation and must pay millions in damages. That's the ruling from a federal jury on Monday after Lindell claimed Dominion voting systems and an executive rigged the 2020 presidential election. The jury ruled that Lindell and his media company, Frank Speech, must pay Eric Coomer more than $2 million in damages. Coomer had sued Lindell, saying the MyPillow CEO called him treasonous. Monday, jurors found Lindell liable for the 3 statements, saying his company acted recklessly and inflicted emotional distress on Coomer.
The problem is getting that MyPillow money might be hard since that company is, I think they're in bankruptcy protection, and who knows? I don't think he's got a lot of money left.
Don't think so either. A Democratic candidate for New York City mayor is under arrest for allegedly interfering with an immigration hearing. Federal agents arresting the New York City controller and mayoral candidate Brad Lander today in Manhattan. Prior to his arrest, Lander shouted to ICE agents to show him their warrants and badges as they were taking an immigrant into custody.
Bravo. I mean, this is outrageous what's happening on the streets of America. Outrageous. And it's not just in the street. They're going to, despite the comments from Trump to the contrary, they're actually leaning in harder, going to agricultural fields, going to slaughterhouses, going to the fashion district, going to churches, going to quinceañeras, going to anywhere they think there may be Latinos primarily who are the victims of these sweeps. And so when you go to a restaurant kitchen and when you go to these places that you know are being supported by this large immigrant community, and you go in with these masked ICE agents, unidentified, and here is the latest. I mean, this is just these are brutal takedowns, and the brutality is part of it. This is designed to have a chilling effect, and that's why you're seeing a lot of workers not showing up at construction sites, at all those other places that I mentioned. It's the final blow, of course, is that Trump is saying he's going to go after blue cities and blue states mostly. He's directed his immigration people to concentrate on blue cities and blue states. And the twisted logic is because they're sanctuary cities and they're protecting these people from the righteous deportation. I mean, that's essentially the thinking behind it. What's that, Kim?
Can I ask what's so bad about asking to see a badge number and a warrant?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, but look at what they do to this guy. Yeah.
I mean, if you were being arrested, wouldn't you want to know these things? Like, why am I being arrested? Tell me, why are you taking me into custody? Who are you? Are you just some random off the street, or are you a legit officer of the law?
Right. That's the question that is answered if you'll tell me your name or your last name and your badge number. Exactly. Right. I mean, and even those things can be phonied up, but it's harder to phony that stuff up. And those questions have greater power, especially now when everybody is cell phone videoing everything. That's a huge power that we have. I made the point again the other day that I see this cell phone video and powerful, heartbreaking videos as perhaps a way to push back on this policy, because otherwise the brutality of this just goes ignored. It reminds me a lot of the Vietnam War, where you saw the war coming home. It was the first TV war, they called it. And you saw the atrocities and the awfulness of war, and you saw the endless nature of it, and it began to feed the anti-war movement in a way they'd never been fed before, and it's supercharged to the point that, Nixon, he won the presidency, I think it was in 72, saying, I'm going to end the war. And so that became a target. And in this case, I'm going to end the brutality of these ICE raids. They are too brutal. It's not the country we are. It doesn't represent who we are as Americans. And the idea of anonymous thugs grabbing people off the street, no ID, it's outrageous. And it's antithetical to what the country is. You want to deport people? You want to arrest them? Fine. Do it with names and badge numbers and information publicly available. It should be. Yeah, go ahead.
To that end, I will say there's another story. This one I found in The Guardian, and it is about an effort to make it illegal for local, state, and federal law enforcement officers to cover their faces while conducting official business. That if you cover your face while you're conducting official business, this proposal would make that a misdemeanor charge in California. So it would require all law enforcement officials to show their faces and be identifiable by their uniform, which they, according to this new bill, would have to carry their name or other identifier. It wouldn't apply to the National Guard or other troops, and it would exempt SWAT teams and officers responding to natural disasters. So,
and I'm sorry, where is that bill? Who's trying to pass it?
This is state senator in California, Scott Wiener, who represents San Francisco.
San Francisco. He does a lot of great stuff, or a lot of his bills.
Jesse Arguin, of Democratic state senator representing the Berkeley and Oakland area, are working together on that. They say they're seeing more and more law enforcement officers, particularly at the federal level, covering their faces entirely, not identifying themselves at all, and at times even wearing army fatigues where we can't tell if these are law enforcement officers or, according to Wiener, vigilante militia. We don't know who they are.
That's right. So, that's exactly right.
Yeah. Televangelist Jimmy Swaggart is listed in critical condition after going into cardiac arrest Sunday morning at his home in Louisiana. The 90-year-old Swaggart, regarded as one of the pioneers in bringing the church into people's homes through television. Swaggart founded the Sun Life Broadcasting Network and the Family Worship Center in Louisiana, both of which his family still runs. His sons say without a miracle, his time will be short.
Well, I mean, his time may be short, but he's lived to 90, and
90's pretty good, yeah.
Did a bunch of stuff that wasn't very. Didn't he do that? That was one of the great apologies. I'm sorry we don't have that. We love apologies on this show, and it was the opposite of the.
My bad. I'm sorry.
It was the opposite of that. There it is. Tony's got it, where he was weeping.
What was he apologizing for?
You, my Lord. I've sinned before you.
Send $20.
He was apologizing for knocking around with a hooker in a motel. Right. It was apparently a regular kind of thing. He used to do it all the time. And by the way, hey, lo que pase, pase, man, whatever you want. But I'm not a preacher. If I'm a preacher, I think I try to hold myself to, I have sinned. That's it. Lord, I have sinned against you, my Lord. It was an absolutely terrific performance. I really did enjoy it. He was so convincing, and anyway, but it was the best apology. We have so many different apologies on this show. We love the apologies.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah, and my words upset so many people.
My words upset so many people.
Yeah. I misspoke. I'm sorry.
I misspoke. My words upset so many people.
Of course, the full Tubin.
It was wrong. It was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
But I have sinned before you, my Lord. Tony, we need that. That must be added to the. Here it is. Hear it. Yeah.
I have sinned against you, my Lord. Oh, Jesus. And I would ask that your precious blood would wash and cleanse every stain until it is in the seas of God's forgetfulness.
I'll tell you, that's brilliant. I love it. Well done. Wow. Encore.
No context will suffice to explain the hurt and anguish caused by my words.
That's another preacher who apologized.
I offer this sincere apology to you today.
Yes. Anyway, he's look, he had a great run. 90 is pretty respectable. Yeah. And as I say, he hit
He's
that
still
one
alive.
speed bump. Yeah, he's still alive. Yeah, exactly. I wish him the best. I wish him many years of apologizing ahead. I think he's one of the great apologizers. Yeah.
I miss televangelist theater on the Mark Thompson show. We should
used to do that on the radio. Yeah, we used to do the radio,
yeah.
televangelist theater. It was pretty great. Yeah, it's true.
A few more stories for you. Home builder sentiment is close to hitting its pandemic low. The National Association of Home Builders citing high mortgage rates and uncertainty over the economy as key factors in a 2-point drop in sentiment in June. Amazon Prime Day expanding to 4 days this year. Whoop-de-whoop. The online retail giant announcing its popular annual sale for members will be held July 8th through the 11th. Conservationists are using drones to drop mosquitoes over Maui. It's in the name of saving the endangered native honey creeper bird. The male mosquitoes come from a lab. The goal is to get them to mate with wild female mosquitoes in the forests of Maui. The males have naturally occurring bacteria that results in sterile eggs. So the objective is to break the mosquito breeding cycle and reduce the population there.
That would be so great. Mosquitoes, they transmit, as you know, some of the most awful illnesses, crippling diseases.
Lastly, the Beatles, the next generation, are coming out with a song. John Lennon's son, Sean Lennon, and Paul McCartney's son, James McCartney, joined with Ringo Starr's son, Zach Starkey's band, Mantra of the Cosmos. Starkey teased their collaboration. It's called Rip Off over the weekend on Instagram. I'm looking forward to hearing the song. Kind of cool to see those three together.
It does have that. That's pretty great pedigree. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. This report is so interesting because if you look at the picture, they all look so much like their dads. So cool.
I guess they do. You're right. It's pretty eerie. Those who are just listening, it would be worth going to YouTube or you Google it on your own. They all do look like they're Papa Beatles.
Yeah. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. The coffee, the tea, the goodness all comes right to your porch. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, the website. They have great tasting notes. It is all organic. The product is amazing. Plus, they fund women-owned farms where they source the beans. So check it out, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And if you find something you want, please use our code MarkT. It'll get you 10% off exclusively from the Mark Thompson Show and CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
I'm having a cup right now. I love it. I love this stuff. Can't get enough of it. Love it. Can't get enough of it, Kim.
Right.
So good. Yeah.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is the Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
June Swoon, I'll again remind you it's coming up on June 26th. Only 20 people will be allowed into our room. I think that's what we had at 20 or 25.
What, Mark?
I don't know. I forget whether it's 20 or 25. I'll let 25. Come on, why not? Why is it so bad to anyway, It's a virtual meetup Thursday, June 26th, wherever you are in the world. Please join us. Adjust your June swoon clock to 6:30 p.m. Pacific time and adjust it for wherever you'll be. It'll be 2 hours of swooning, special guests, and here's how you lock up a seat. $50 donation to our show. You'll do it on PayPal. There are PayPal links under our videos, also on our website, themarkthompsonshow.com. And when you make the donation, just note June swoon with the donation or meetup, whatever. RSVP after you've done that to mtsmeetup@gmail.com and just say, hey, I want you to make sure you see my donation on PayPal or whatever you want to say, or did it. And I will put you into a locked position. You'll lock up your seat for June swoon. It's going to be good. I think you're going to like it.
There's never been anything like this.
Except for the one last year. There's never been anything like it. All right. I have quick comments I want to get to. Citizen Morgan says, I type the Mark Thompson Show as one of my regular searches of the YouTube search bar. Thank you. I think that does help us also, right? Tony's kind of our guy on what helps us and what doesn't.
Yes.
Can't hurt, probably, right? Does help.
I mean, it's what they say is YouTube is the second most used search engine in the world, only behind Google itself. And Google owns YouTube, so there you go.
Yeah. Nullifidian says antithetical is a ding word. I think I said antithetical, so you're right. Thank you for catching that. John Cleese's apology from the fish called Wanda. We'll find that, and maybe we'll include that in our, panoply of apology that we are gonna. Didn't Jimmy Swaggart also marry his first cousin? Asks Tammy.
Really?
Oh, I think that is worth investigating. If it's true,
Google it.
I think it could be true. Jim Shields says, preach it, Jimmy. My cousin's wife is related to Jimmy Swaggart, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Mickey Gilley. Her family must have had some great reunions. Yeah. Boy, you're not kidding. Man, I think Swaggart was a musician also. I think during his church services, his televised church stuff, when he was churching, he was still singing. I think that was a big part of, who he was. Tammy says, we used to get stoned and watch Ernest Angley heal people. The healing is the best, man. That Southern cast out the devil stuff, that's the best show on earth. That is absolutely the best show. And I have to say this, if I'm going to go to church, give me a show, okay? I mean, don't just sit there, you get in the book, you stand up, you kneel down, you read a bunch of stuff, you cross yourself, whatever it might be. That's all great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not dumping on it. But what I'm saying is, one thing I like about the Catholic Church, they have all the different hats, they have all the different outfits. Give me some wardrobe changes. Give me a show. So, like the evangelical church, they have great music. I love music. The black churches have insanely great music. Like, that is terrific. I told you about, last thing, I'll just tell you this real quick, less than a minute. When I was, this is in a galaxy far, far away, long, long ago, I was a weather guy in Los Angeles, and I went to this first AME church where I believe it was for Christmas we were doing it. And so, it kind of show the the texture of the community, and it's a very uplifting thing. And then I do the weather. It's kind of, anyway. So when I got there, sort of like, all right, whatever. But you sit in that church for a while and you listen, and they've got all the music going. And on my way out, I was like a different guy. I was like, God bless you, brother. God bless you, brother. God bless you. God bless you. Is it me? I'm saying that.
You caught the religion.
I'm just saying, I at least the spirit of it, got into me, even though it was just like a greeting to me. But so give me a show. So when you say you used to get stoned and watch them heal people, I feel you. That is part of the show. So anything else I need to do, Kim? I'm a little
I think
behind.
there's some I think there's some other people to thank and some things we hadn't gotten to.
Harry Magnan, look at you. They're the Blues Brothers. Yeah, thank you. That's great. That's exactly what it was. Harry Magnan, holy hole in the firewall, Batman. IT forgot to block YouTube today. Let's see how long this lasts. Yeah, we got the whole 2 hours in. Thank you, Harry. Thank you for the $10 super chat. Chaplain Fred, who is quickly becoming an MVP of the show. Mark, yesterday I asked, what was your opinion regarding the elder veteran arrested along with other elderly veterans? I was so upset to see it. I am a retired Army chaplain, and I was so hurt and sick to see these veterans arrested. You know, the veteran community is not being honored by the current administration.
No.
It's an abomination, given the fact that there is a fetishizing of the military and a wrapping themselves in the military that they do. Trump has an obsession with the military, and David Cay Johnston's website, dcreport.org, the one he helped to found, they have a huge piece on that, on the way that this administration has wrapped its arm around the military and how they sort of are claiming the pride that Americans have in the military in a way to conceal many things. But you kind of say the quiet part out loud, which is that veterans are not being honored in any way by, there it is, Trump and military displays on DC Report. But what they're doing to veterans and veteran benefits, they did it in season 1 of the Trump show. But what they're doing now, the open disregard for those who have given of their lives, I'm talking about time of their lives to serve our country in these military positions, it's just wrong. So thank you for pointing. It is sickening. It is sickening to see these veterans arrested. It is. But what is an ongoing sickening thing is to see veteran benefits completely undercut, to see the VA dismantled. It's horrifying. So we'll send you to war. We'll send you to theaters of war, but we don't honor you when you come back. I mean, both parties are very much about honoring veterans, yet one party is dismantling all the ways that those veterans are honored with benefits. Adrian says, thank God for David Cay Johnston. Right on. I agree with that. He's the real thing, David Cay Johnston. Yes. Anything else, Kim?
And I have one more. And this one, there you go.
All right. Thank you. Cousin Erie says, ICE just arrested a New York City mayoral candidate, comptroller. The world is watching. Kim, do you have any info on that?
Yeah, I just did it in the news. We just talked about it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that was the video that we saw, right? That was about who are you people? I want some badge numbers.
Show me a warrant. Show me your badge number. Absolutely. Yeah, and
exactly.
Now he's getting in trouble for that, right? Yeah. No.
Yeah, it's crazy. Cool. It's absolutely crazy. So I shout out to Uma Abedin, the ex of that Weiner. Who was the Anthony Weiner? Is that his first name? Anthony?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Anyway, he was the
Google it.
All right.
Well, because we were just talking about Scott Weiner, state senator.
It's not Scott Weiner. Scott Weiner's in San Francisco. He does a lot of great stuff.
Anthony Weiner. Anthony Weiner, not so much.
Anthony Weiner was the her ex is Anthony. But anyway, that was a while ago. She was the sort of right-hand person to Hillary Clinton. Yeah. She married Alex Soros.
Yeah.
And Alex Soros, and they're a cute couple. I'm just looking at some of their wedding pictures and wishing the kids well. That's all I'm saying. Wishing the kids well.
I don't know. It kind of, their wedding picture kind of looks like the Addams Family.
It does?
Yeah, I think it
Which
does.
one are you looking at? Let me see it.
You tell me what you think. Don't you think they look like the Addams Family?
Well, he doesn't look, it looks like, they could give him a 3-2-1 and let them know they're taking the picture. I mean, it just does look a little, he does look a little Gomez Adams. I'll give you that. Yeah, I'll give you that. That's not a great picture of those two, to be fair. I also missed the nuptials of Sean Hannity and what's her name from what's her name? The woman from Fox and Friends. Didn't they hook up and now they're a man and wife?
I wasn't keeping track of Fox.
Are they man and wife?
Google it.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Welcome to Marriage Talk. I'm your host, Mark Thompson. I barely know who's getting married.
I try not to pay attention to that guy.
Calvin Wong thinks he's a 6. I don't think he's a. I think that's
Ainsley Earnhardt.
Yeah, Ainsley Earnhardt and Sean Hannity. Are they married though, or are they just like a thing? They've been a thing for a while, I think.
I think he married her.
CC Ryder says I wish Alex and Uma would get more involved in funding pro-democracy media to help combat the right-wing propaganda machine. Yeah, there is a lot of funding, but you're right, not to the extent that there is there. Let me see that Sean Hannity again, please, and then we're going to adjourn for the day. Sean, that's the two of them. But are they, you're saying they're not married?
I think they are.
Oh, they are married?
I believe they're married, yeah.
Does somebody follow Sean Hannity?
Google it.
I mean, it seems, do you want me to Google it? Are they married? Is it your testimony?
I'm looking at an article, although from a dubious source. Fox News host Sean Hannity drops bombshell on why he married Ainsley Earnhardt and underwent.
That's all I need.
And
Sean
underwent
Hannity.
IVF at age 65. Wow.
And how old is she?
I don't know. Doesn't say.
Oh my God.
Google it.
48. She's 48. She's 48.
Okay,
48.
Thank you very much. So 48 and he's 65?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
All right, well, I don't know about that. I wish them both well. How's that? I don't know. It's time for us to leave, although I feel like Kim left about 10 minutes ago. I don't know what...
What?
I just am saying I couldn't get a basic Google search on who's married and who's not. I mean, I'm just...
I've been here working on this the whole time. What is wrong with you people?
I am a grateful host for everyone who's contributed today and to our conversation and to our show and to the support. Maybe we'll see you on June 26th for June's Swoon. In any case, we'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, John Rothman joins. We also have the great award-winning investigative reporter, Gary Baum, who will join us as well. In fact, we'll talk about the Sean Combs trial, among other things. And
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Leanne Caldwell, too, tomorrow.
Yes. Oh, Leanne Caldwell. Thank you, Kim. Life is worth living. Until tomorrow, bye-bye.